Okay, in our review tonight, I would like to hit on some of the high points or the most important things to know for your upcoming lab exam. As you see here to the right, we have a pH scale, and I want you to notice a couple things. First of all, that right in the middle, we have pH 7, which is neutral. So an example of this would be pure water, would be pH 7. Anything with a pH higher than 7 is going to be considered basic. Anything with a pH lower than 7 is considered acidic. And there are two ions that we need to talk about when we're speaking of pH or bases and acids, and that is the ions of the OH minus or the hydroxide ion and the H plus or the hydrogen ion. Now in pure water, the amount of hydroxide ion is equal to the amount of hydrogen ion. That's what makes it pure water. In anything basic, you're going to have more hydroxide ions, and in anything acidic, you're going to have more hydrogen or H plus ions. Now, in your lab, you use litmus paper to test for the pH of certain chemicals. Specifically, you had acetic acid and you had sodium bicarbonate, which is basic. And with your blue litmus paper, when you tested sodium bicarbonate, it should have remained blue because that's the indication that it was basic by that particular litmus paper. And when you test the blue litmus paper with acetic acid, you should have seen a change. That paper should have turned pinkish or reddish to indicate that that was in fact an acid or had a pH below 7. And on your experiment, one of the things that you did is you had a certain amount of sodium bicarbonate, and so therefore you tested with your pH paper and you see that it had a pH above 7. And then you dropped in 1 milliliter at a time of acetic acid, and after each addition of the 1 milliliter, you then tested with the litmus paper. And what you were doing is you were trying to determine how many milliliters of acetic acid does it take to actually neutralize that base. So after the first milliliter, if you tested it and it was still blue, that indicated it's still a base. After the second milliliter addition, if it was still blue, it was still a base. When you got to the point where the paper was turning purple, or if it started to turn pink, you knew that you had actually neutralized or maybe even turned that sodium bicarbonate a little bit acidic. That's called a neutralization reaction when you mix an acid with a base to get a neutral solution. And many times that's done in a laboratory before. We don't want to put an acid or a base directly down the sink. So those are neutralized before we can properly dispose of them. Now I'm going to move on